Hi, welcome to Diamond Delight Edibles. My name is Liz. If this is the first time you're joining, and for the rest of you guys, thank you so much and welcome back. So I've been asked about chocolate in the past, and I've never been able to successfully get it to set at room temperature using Canna butter. Then the other day when I was doing the truffle demonstration, I was using the shortening to thin out our chocolate for decorating. It dawned on me that shortening sets at room temperature in chocolate will stay set at room temperature. So I made up an infusion with shortening instead of butter, and I do it just like the small infusion, like all other ones. I'll run a quick little thing for you here on it, but if you want more detail on it, you can check out the small infusion video. So I did a small infusion of shortening, and I'll show you how much better that works. And the reason being is butter has a melting point of, I think it's between 85 and 95 degrees Fahrenheit. So basically a little room temperature, a little bit warm, your chocolate is going to melt, or sorry, your butter is going to melt. However, shortening's melting point is 95 to 115 degrees Fahrenheit. So it's got a lot more stability. So you know that if you've got shortening and butter on the counter, you notice your shortening is nice and solid, or your butter might be a melted mess on that hot day. And that's the reason, is because of the higher melting point. So adding that into our chocolate does not affect our chocolate, and it allows it to stay set at room temperature. Now, I'm doing this demonstration with candy melts. If you want to do it with real chocolate, that's not a problem, but you will have to temper it. I hate tempering chocolate. One of these days I will do a video on how to do it exactly. But personally, I hate it. The candy melts taste great and they just work so easily. So I'm going to show you that demonstration with it. And so check this out. So here's our chocolate. It's nice and snap, and you can see it's not all melting and squishy. Let's see if you can hear it. Hoping that came through on the thing. And then for our peanut butter cups, anytime I have made peanut butter cups in the past, all the recipes that I have looked up add anywhere between 2 to 6 cups of powdered sugar. And I'm like, that is disgusting. One time I've made it, and it's so sweet. All you get is sugar and with a hint of peanut butter, and it still doesn't stay set. At room temperature, it still kind of oozes out, and it's just not a proper peanut butter cup. So off I go and do my research and stuff, look up the actual ingredients in a Reese peanut butter cup, how I can make certain things work for us, and I've managed to come up with this for us. So check this out. The peanut butter cup that I did a little earlier. Look at that center. There's no oozing or squishing out. Looks just like a peanut butter cup, the nice thin chocolate layers. Yeah, that's right. I'm going to show you guys how to do this. All right. Now, with regards to doing this recipe, it's really good because you have full control over how much sugar you want to use. You can use just a little bit or a lot of the powdered sugar because we're going to use all natural peanut butter. And so this is great for people who are diabetic. Now, if you can't use sugar, what you can do is increase the tapioca starch that we use and add in honey or maple syrup or agave syrup as your sweetener. And you can eliminate sugar, as well as, because we're adding in our salt. If you're on a salt-reduced diet, you can either eliminate it altogether or add in as little or as much as you like. So this is really good for anybody who is restricted with diet. As well as if you're a diabetic, you can use the dark chocolate. Instead of milk chocolate, use dark chocolate. All right, guys, so let's jump into those ingredients and what we need to get started. Let's make some chocolate. Plant material decarbing in a smaller mason jar at 240 for 40 minutes. And then I've just got my shortening. I've used 1 cup of shortening. Mine's yellow because I've used the butter flavor. So I'm going to be using my shortening in place of butter for a lot of things. So I decided to go with the butter flavor. and a pot of water. Now you need the pot large enough, deep enough, that it is going to be able to cover your oil or your shortening once it's melted with the herb in it. It's very important that your oil is always covered by water. So I'm just going to place this in here into the water, and I'm going to let that melt up. Just going to boil that up and let that melt down while my herb is decarbing, and then we got to cool it. Cool our herb. Now you can always use a French press instead of a mason jar. It's nice because it already has the built-in screen for helping when you have to. Now you can also use a French press for this. I usually use the French press. However, I thought more people have a mason jar, so I just go the mason jar method today. Alright, so I have just added my plant material to my shortening, and I've just given it a mix up there, a nice little mix up. I'm going to place her in the water, and like I said, the one thing is very important is that your water is above your shortening line. You never want it to go below, and the reason is if you do, your shortening is going to get hotter than what we want it to. Keeping the water on the outside and completely surrounded maintains a constant temperature for what's inside. If you allow that to go below, your shortening will actually heat up a lot higher and can burn your plant material, which we don't want. So I said I'm going to let that go for 2 hours. Every once in a while I'm going to come by and give her a shake up. And if you're wondering, I was using shake. That's why I don't have any larger pieces in there. And that's it. And we're just going to let, I said, go for 2 hours. Okay, so you just want to have it on a mild simmer like that, just where there's little tiny bubbles on the bottom of the pot, but it is not boiling or vigorously boiling. So you want to keep that temperature down a little bit. Infusion is done. Make sure that you strain it really well with a fine mesh strainer, a cheesecloth, or you can get one of these. Hold on. You can get one of these bags from Magical Butter, and it has this super fine, it catches all the really fine sediment. Or as I said, cheesecloth, and that'll work as well. You put it into your stand mixer, or if you're going to use a hand mixer, you're going to be standing there for about 20 minutes. We're going to set this to low, and we're going to let this go for about 20 minutes, as I said. Now, if you used regular shortening, yours is going to be a lot lighter, very light green. And because I used the butter one, it's very yellow, so mine's it's going to probably be darker than yours if you didn't use the butter. But yeah, just pour it into a container. It will solidify, and you can use it just like butter in most of your recipes. All right. So for our peanut butter cups, what we're going to need is about 150 grams. We're going to make 6 large ones. So we're going to need about 150 grams of Hershey's chocolate. If you want them to taste as close to the Reese peanut butter cup, you want to use the Hershey's chocolate. If you don't really care that much, any milk chocolate will work. And essentially you want about 150 grams. And for Canada, it's about 3 of the small bars. Probably, I think in the States, it's like 2, or you can just use 1 large one. Whoop! In and around. Oh, I got chocolate in my peanut butter. Oh. All right. We are going to need a half a cup of peanut butter, minus the bar wrapper. You're going to want an additional about 1/4 cup to a half cup. We are going to want 1 cup of powdered or icing sugar, a tablespoon of either Canna butter or Canna shortening. Now, the shortening is going to give you a more solid product, especially at room temperature. Because butter melts at a lower room temperature, they'll be a little bit softer at room. If you use the shortening, they're going to stay firmer. You're going to want a tablespoon of tapioca starch, a half a teaspoon of salt, and about a teaspoon of milk. Doesn't matter what kind of milk. And that's for our peanut butter cups. For our chocolate bars, you're going to want either, if you do not want to temper your chocolate, then use the chocolate candy melts. They taste great, they work amazing, they're pretty much idiot proof. If you do want to use real chocolate and you're experienced and you know how to temper, go right ahead. I've done tempering a few times. I hate tempering. So I'm going with the candy melts, and you absolutely want to use the Canna shortening, not butter. And as I said, because your shortening has a melting point of 95 to 115, so your chocolates are going to stay set at room temperature. That's all we need for the chocolate side. So let's jump into our equipment and what we need, and then we'll get some of this stuff made up here. All right, so what we're going to need for our peanut butter cups are some cupcake liners, either medium or large. I've got the large here. A cupcake pan to put these into to hold them up. Going to need a pair of scissors, some spatulas, a bowl, an offset spatula, and a spoon, and your mixer with the blades for our for the peanut butter cup. As well, if you've got one of these, is a candy dispenser or a chocolate dispenser. These are great, especially because we want to get the same amount and we want to do it quickly and easily. Now, here's a little trick for you to create because when they normally come, they're like this, and you have to push them. They're not automatic, but you can create an automatic trigger by taking elastic, just make a slip through it, and then just put it across the bottom like so, and now you've got an auto trigger. Isn't that smart? All right, so that's it for our peanut butter cups. For our chocolate, we just need our mold, pretty much. Now, I really do recommend getting the polycarbonate molds, because they work so much. You come out with that really professional looking chocolate. I don't recommend the silicone ones because, one, it's difficult to get your chocolate bars out of. You have to peel them out. Quite often they break. As well as you don't get quite the same shine as you do from the polycarbonates, or the plastic molds work really well as well. So I think that's about it. Usually me, I forget something I'll throw in there later, but I think I've got the major stuff covered. So let's jump into our making our peanut butter cups first. All right, so the very first thing we're going to do is we got to cut our cups down to size. So the easiest way to do this, I'm going to do 6, so I've got 6 of my liners here, is fold them in half, like so. And then you want to cut about a ½ an inch, quarter an inch, ½ an inch off. And you're just going to try and go evenly all the way around. See, now we have cups that are roughly the same size, the right size. So I just put them into your tins. Stay. And then the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get our chocolate, our Hershey's chocolate melted, or your plain milk chocolate. We're going to get that melted. Now you can either melt it in the microwave. I do mine at 30-second interval first, then 20, then 15, then I finish it out at 10-second intervals until it is completely melted. You can do it over a double boiler, so any pot or a proper double boiler you can use, or one of those candy melting pots. Any of those methods will work just perfectly fine. Oops. So I'm just going to set that aside for the moment. And if you want to, if you are using the Canna shortening, you can add about a teaspoon or so of Canna shortening to your chocolate if you'd like to. But I'm just going to get that melted up, and then we'll get everything put together. All right, so I've got my chocolate melted here. It's all nice and smooth, and like so. So now you want to take a little bit, about a teaspoon or so. Let's see. You're going to just drop it into the bottom. We're going to move it around. Now, they're a little difficult to work with. I find it's easier to take them out. You can use the back of the spoon to go around the bottom. And you want to bring it up around your edges. And remember, you just want to keep it a thin coat. And you want to try and get as close to that top there as you can. You can just dip the back of the spoon in if you need a little bit more. Like so. So I've got all the sides relatively evenly covered here. Drop her back into the mold and into the cake pan, or the cupcake pan, and you smack that down. Kind of hold it and smack it down. Now, if your bottom is not all filled, just take a little bit more and just lightly enough so that you just have that little light coating on the bottom. So these are a bit of a pain to get doing. Let's knock it down so they're even. I'm going to try it. I'm just going to do that again to all of them. I find the offset works a lot better. So I'm just going to finish the rest of these out, and then we will get the peanut butter part going. And if you find there's a little too much in the bottom, you can just drop out the excess. Alright, so now that I got all the chocolate into my cups here, just going to clean off the top. And then we're going to set these aside, let them set up while we make up our peanut butter filling. Alright, so for our peanut butter filling, we're going to put in our 1/2 cup of our all-natural peanut butter. We are going to put in our Canna shortening, but we want it melted. And the reason that we want it melted is because if it's at room temperature and it's more that solid, it may not evenly distribute all through your peanut butter. There'll be you can end up with little clumps of it. So you definitely want to make sure to melt it. Get that in there. And we are going to our sifter. We are going to add our powdered sugar, our tapioca, and our salt. And we're going to sift that through. And any hard chunks that don't go through, just discard those. And now we're going to need our mixer. First of all, so we don't end up with flying powder everywhere, you just want to fold that into your peanut butter and your Canna shortening or your butter. And we're going to add in our teaspoon of milk. And we're just going to start our mixer on low. Now what will happen is it is all going to clump up like this. It's going to clump up like this. It's going to kind of look like granola. That's okay. Don't worry. That's what we have the extra peanut butter for. This is what we want it to do to start with. So just continue to mix it until it's all broken down into little chunks like this. And now we're going to take our peanut butter with our mix and we're just going to drizzle some in a little at a time until it starts to come together and form a nice mixture. So, looks like I'm going to need this. Might need a little bit more than that 1/2 cup. We'll see. Actually, I think I just used a 1/4 cup there. So, need a little bit more. Just going to add in about another big spoonful here. And I'm just going to add in a little bit. So the texture that we're looking for basically is like a peanut butter dough. So we don't want it super stiff, but we also don't want it really, really loose. So we do want it basically like a dough like this. So I do want it a little bit looser because that's a little too firm, but this is what we're working towards. So I'm just going to scoot in a little bit more peanut butter. Now if you've got it like this, it's coming together. So now we're just going to knead it a little bit. So I said it should be like dough. We're just going to knead this up a little bit. And then I'm just going to take pieces of it and I'm just going to kind of roll it. Trying to roll it into a rope here. About the size of the bottom of my cup, the diameter of my cups. And then you're going to cut about 1/4 inch discs. Well, I only need 6. We got a lot of dough here. And then we're going to take 2 of them and stack them together like so. Now if you used butter, yours are going to be a little bit looser. If you use the shortening, they're going to be a lot firmer. And that's because there's no water in shortening. There is, I think, a 2 to 3% of water in butter. So we got those. Going to get my cups. And then we're going to take about 2 of those discs and squish them down. into our mold. And then you're going to take your tray and you're going to work them. You're going to smack them down, start to fill into the cup. So you just want to make sure to fill in your cup until it's almost right to the top of the where your chocolate is, because you know on the Reese cups it's a very, very thin layer of chocolate over your top. So you want them filled up to almost the top. You just want to leave just like a little millimeter or so of space for your chocolate topping. And you want to try and make sure that's even as possible. I said mine's a little bit stiffer. Yours, if you use the butter, will be smoother and they will flatten out nicely and evenly into your molds when you smack them down like so. And for your extra peanut butter, if you've got it, you can just store it in any kind of airtight container and use it at a later date. So I'm gonna pop those into the fridge for about a half hour. Now here is a peanut butter center that I made up earlier. This I used with Canna butter. So you can see it's a lot looser and more workable. It's not as stiff as the one with the shortening. And so this one, as I said, when you put it in to your mold, into the chocolate cups, and you smack them down, they just spread out really nice. So now for our chocolate bars, what I've done is I added my my shortening. I melted my shortening and I added it on into my chocolate, and you're just going to mix that around so they're kind of all coated, and you're gonna melt your chocolate in your preferred method. All right, so you've got your melted chocolate. Now it's really important to stir it well, not vigorously because we don't want to create a ton of air bubbles, but we want to make sure that it is well stirred so that our shortening is properly incorporated into the chocolate. And you'll know that there'll be no streaks. It's going to be one uniform color and texture. You won't see any kind of streaking. Now I've lined up, just put a piece of parchment paper down so it can catch any of the excess that we scrape off so that none goes to waste. And if you don't thoroughly stir it like so to make sure that the shortening is properly and well incorporated, you'll end up with streaks in your chocolate. You don't want that. You want to have that really pretty solid look to it. Okay, once you're happy with your chocolate, before we put it into the mold, we're going to tap it out a little bit to get out some of those air bubbles. So you're going to shake it, agitate it, and then smack her down. And there we go. And now we're just going to pour it into our molds. Now, when you're pouring in your molds, again, you want to do it nice and evenly, fairly quickly and evenly, so that you get that nice smooth. If you do it in kind of sections, pour a little bit, shake it out, you'll end up with different layer looks to it. You don't want to have that. So I basically, oh, look at that, I calculated that pretty good. Shake her through. And then you want to get our spatula like that. And you're going to go hold it straight to the top. Oop, and just go straight along, and this will pull off your excess. Off your edges. And I'm just going to give this a final little shake and tap down any excess, get out any of the excess air bubbles. Just want to make sure those sides are clean so you can take out a nice, even, nice clean chocolate. And once you're happy with your mold, it's going to go into the fridge for a minimum of 20 minutes. It needs that time to crystallize. Something like that. It's a technical term in chocolate to let it come back together. So it needs at least, I said, 20 minutes in the fridge. Do not put it in the freezer to speed this up. It needs to be the fridge. So while our chocolate bars are setting, we can put the tops onto our peanut butter cups. So I've just remelted my chocolate, the remainder of my Hershey's chocolate here. And we are going to just add a little bit to the top and just smooth her out. Use your teaspoon. Again, remember, we just want a nice thin coating and just seal up that top. So put it on, smack her down. So you're just going to smack them down till the tops are nice and even, and then you're going to pop these back into the fridge for 20 minutes to let that top chocolate set. And then we are going to take everything out and see how everything looks. Alright, so the chocolate bars are set. Now, if you don't want to get fingerprints on your nice, pretty chocolate, you want to use latex or rubber gloves. So you take them out of the refrigerator, let them sit for just about 30 seconds, a minute, and then we're going to give them a good smack. Whoops, one broke, not too hard. And you can just flip them over. And there we go. Beautiful chocolate bars. And then I'll show you once they get to room temperature that they will actually stay set. And we'll bring out the peanut butter cups and check those puppies out. Now here's one thing I wanted to show you. You might see on some of the chocolate here, there's some slight imperfections. It's not completely smooth and clear, or it's nice and smooth and shiny. That was because there was my mold was not 100% clean. I thought it was. Your molds have to be really 100% clean with hot soapy water and completely dried. Otherwise, that will happen to your chocolate. So let's have a look at our peanut butter cups and we'll wrap the puppy up. Oh, sorry, and then to store your chocolate or to keep them, you want to use a some thin tin foil, and you just wrap them up like a little Christmas present. I'm not very good at wrapping presents, but there you got it. And then you can always make your own wrappers just from, you can print out on paper. You can make your own paper wrappers for them. All right, so I got my peanut butter cups out. Now, if there's any chocolate kind of stuck to the, to your cupcake liner and the tin, you just want to scrape that, make sure that's loose. And then you should be able to just take them and flip them out. There we go. There we got our peanut butter cups. So let's have a look at one of these suckers. There we go. So what I do to avoid for the edges, I would recommend then to do 2 rounds of coating the edges. That'll help take care of that issue there. And then have a look inside of them. So you can see if you've made these before, if you went to open them up, they would have squished all out. And check out those insides. Looks just like a peanut butter cup. Isn't that cool? And these taste so good with so much reduced sugar to all those other recipes out there. And a way that you can actually make them vegan, or let's see, vegan. Yeah, if you use the vegetable shortening and you use the tapioca starch with you can use powdered sugar. I think that's not an issue. But if you don't want to use powdered sugar, you can increase the tapioca a little bit and use honey or maple syrup or agave syrup. One of those replacement syrups. You can use that as a sweetener and avoid the sugar altogether. You just, as I said, have to increase that tapioca somewhat. You just kind of have to work till you get to that consistency texture. But other than that, that's my demonstration there for you today. If you have any questions at all, as always, please don't hesitate to ask. And ooh, I got to get the stuff off my fingers. And I hope you enjoyed that. You guys have an awesome rest of your day. Thank you so much for watching.